Kia ora koutou, and in this video, I'd like to have a chat about climate change and I think about how we should respond to climate change as Christians. But to start us off, I'd like to tell a little story. So, I was fortunate enough a couple of weeks ago to be out on one of our Pacific nations close to Aotearoa, and I was talking to somebody from the World Health Organization, and we got talking about climate change, as you do when you're in a Pacific island. And he passed what I thought was a really profound comment. He said, people don't understand what they haven't experienced. And many of you won't have been on a Pacific island or may have only been on a Pacific island to go for a holiday and experience the resort island for a Pacific island. And so I'd like to show you a different side of Pacific Island through this little story. So I'd like you to close your eyes and imagine you are on a small Pacific island. Now, this Pacific island is approximately 21 kilometers around the outside of it. So the entire nation is about 21 kilometers on the perimeter of it. If you were to walk the island, it would, depending on how fast or slow you walked, it would probably take you about 4 hours to walk around the island. This island is only about 70 meters high. Now, if you're struggling to figure out how high 70 meters is, if you've ever been to Wellington and you've seen the Majestic Centre, which is the tallest building in Wellington with the prongs out the top of it, it's just under 70 meters high. And as you probably know, if you've been in Wellington, it's still shorter than many of our hills in Wellington. So this Pacific Island is very, very short. The majority of the people who live on this particular Pacific Island, they live on the flat area that surrounds the island before it starts to go uphill. And the majority of people who live on the flat area are relatively poor in comparison to New Zealand people. The main infrastructure on the island is also on the flat. So the hospital is on the flat, and while I was actually on this Pacific island, the hospital was flooded just from some torrential rain that we experienced while we were on the island. The other two main bits of infrastructure on the island are the airport runway, which is on one end of the Pacific Island, and the port, which is on one of the sides of the Pacific Island. Now, it's been said and modelled by scientists that we are to expect some sea level rise as a consequence of climate change. Now, in this particular Pacific Island, if the sea level rises 1 or 2 meters, that pretty much takes out all the land that is currently being lived on by the majority of people on this island. If you think about that, if you had lived on an island, on a patch of land for generations, that means that all of your whānau are buried on that piece of land, that you have worked that piece of land or cared for that piece of land for generations. That means you have to abandon it because it's under the water and you have to shift further up island. Now, that takes out the culture for a lot of people. It takes out the main infrastructure for a lot of people. It probably means that the hospital's not going to be able to be used because it's down on the flat. It probably means that the port is going to be isolated out in the middle of the sea because the ships can't get into the closer bits of land because it's very shallow, the water there in those bits of land. And it probably means that the airport's been taken out as well, which means that this island has pretty much been cut off from the rest of the world. You can open your eyes now. Now, if you're wondering which island we're imagining, it is actually the island nation of Nauru, which is, if you have no idea where that is, it's a tiny little island in the middle of the Pacific. If you sort of know where the Solomon Islands are and go north, you might hit them, Nauru, but it's probably more likely that you would actually miss them because they are so small. So that's the island that we've been talking about. But that is just an example of an island that many of the islands of the Pacific would experience similar things if sea level rise actually happens at the rate that our scientists are saying it will. And that makes me think about what should my response as a Christian be to climate change that is going to impact an island that is not that far away from me, and what that impact is going to be on the people on that island, as well as the physical island itself, the nature on the island. And it makes me think about the poverty that is on the island in those areas that I've explained in the flat bits of the island, and what my responsibility is to the poor in the world as well. And more specifically, the people who are impacted most by climate change are the poor people or the poorer people. And to help with this reflection, I was thinking about the end part of Micah 6:8. And it says, this is what He, the Lord, requires us to do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. And I think, what is my responsibility as a Christian to do those things in relation to the Pacific nations that are close to Aotearoa and which we like to think we have good relationships with those islands as a nation? Now, I don't have any huge answers to that question. It is just something that I'm pondering, and I hope that you would ponder with me, take that to God in some prayer, and ask by His Holy Spirit what could be a response that we could have now that we have experienced a Pacific island, even if it's only in our imagination from the description that I gave you. Mā te wā.